Honey, stop the car, Mrs. Alabi yelled, her voice rising in panic. Her husband slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching as the car jolted to a sudden stop. Oh my God, what were you thinking? She demanded. Her heart racing as she turned to him, her eyes wide with shock. Mr. Alabi, still gripping the steering wheel tightly, tried to steady his breathing. I didn't see anyone, he stammered, his voice shaky. His hands trembled as the reality of what had just happened sank in. I didn't see her, I swear. Without another word, the couple quickly unbuckled their seatbelts and rushed out of the car. There on the ground was an older woman, sitting on the pavement. She looked disorientated, her hands trembling as she tried to gather herself. Ma, are you okay? Mrs. Alabi asked urgently, kneeling beside the woman and gently helping her up. The woman, who appeared to be in her late 60s or early 70s, gave a faint smile as she accepted the assistance. I am all right, my dear, she said softly, though her voice carried a slight tremor. She dusted off her clothes, her hands shaking a little from the shock. Mr. Alabi, standing a few steps back, watched with a mix of guilt and relief. I am so sorry, Ma, he said, his voice heavy with remorse. If there's anything we can do for you, please let us know. The other woman, whose name was Dupe, waved off their concern with a gentle smile. I'm all right, really, she assured them, though her eyes were still wide from the shock. It was just a shock, that's all. But as she glanced down at the old wristwatch on her arm, she noticed a small crack in the glass. A flicker of worry crossed her face. Oh no, I think I might be late for the interview, she murmured, her voice trailing off as she realized the time. Interview? Mrs. Alabi repeated, her brow furrowing in confusion. She took a closer look at Dupe. The woman was her mother's age, with grey hair peeking out from underneath her headscarf. She should be enjoying her retirement, not rushing to interviews. What sort of interview? She asked gently. Her curiosity piqued. Dupe chuckled softly, reading the doubt in the younger woman's eye. I'm still strong, oh, she said, straightening her back as if to prove her point. Don't let my grey hair fool you. I was on my way to apply for a housekeeping job. Mr. and Mrs. Alabi exchanged a glance, both surprised and somewhat dismayed. You are applying for a housekeeping job? Mr. Alabi asked, unable to hide his disbelief. Yes, Dupe nodded, her expression determined. I may be old, but I can still work. I have been taking care of children and homes all my life. I can't just sit at home doing nothing. For a moment, the couple was silent, both processing the unexpected turn of events. They had been on their way to a nanny agency, desperate to find someone who could help them care for their infant daughter. Their demanding jobs left them little time to properly care for the child, and they had been hoping to find someone experienced and trustworthy. As if reading their minds, Dupe smiled warmly at them. Don't worry about me, she said, sensing their hesitation. I have been doing this for years, raising children, managing a home. It is what I do best. Mrs. Alabi looked at her husband, a thoughtful expression on her face. Honey, what if we... Before she could finish, Dupe interrupted with a twinkle in her eye. If you're looking for someone to help with your little one, I'll be happy to assist. I know it's hard to trust someone with your child, but I promise I will care for them like my own. Mrs. Alabi felt a wave of relief over her. There was something about this woman, a gentle demeanor and a kindness in her eyes, that made her feel safe. She turned to her husband, who gave a small nod, agreeing with her unspoken thoughts. Would you consider working for us? Mr. Alabi asked, his voice now calmer. Dupe's eyes lit up, clearly surprised by the offer. Work for you? She repeated, as if needing to hear the words again. Yes, Mrs. Alabi said, her voice more certain now. We've been looking for someone like you, someone with experience who can care for our child and help around the house. Dupe's face softened with gratitude. I would be honored, she said quietly. Thank you. The tension in the head dissipated. replaced by a sense of calm and mutual understanding. The near accident had brought them together in the most unexpected way. As they helped Dupe into the car, offering to drive her home, so she could collect her things, Miss Alabi couldn't help but feel that fate had intervened. Perhaps, she thought, this was exactly what they all needed. And just like that, Dupe became an integral part of the Alabi's household. The couple quickly grew fond of her, treating her as they would their own mother. They made sure she had everything she needed, from a comfortable room to a generous salary that increased with the birth of each of their 3 children. Dupe in turn was devoted to the family, helping raise the children with the same care and love she would have shown her own. Visitors to the Alabi home often mistook Dupe for the children's grandmother, and no one bothered to correct them. After all, the bond between Dupe and the children was so strong that it felt like she was indeed part of the family. The children adored her and the Alabis trusted her completely. But behind Dupe's warm smiles and gentle demeanor, there was a deep sense of gratitude that gnawed at her. Night after night, she would sit in her room lost in thoughts, trying to figure out how she could repay the Alabis for their kindness. These people are too kind to me, she would murmur to herself. Her heart heavy with the weight of her emotions. They provide everything before I even ask. I wish I could do something to show how grateful I am. One evening, as she was deep in thoughts, her eyes wandered to a poster of a plane on her wall, a relic from her younger days when she had dreamed of traveling the world. Suddenly, an idea popped into her mind, and a smile crept across her face. I know what to do, she whispered excitedly to herself. I'll give my gifts to the children. They are so well behaved and wonderful. This would be my way of showing my gratitude. That night, as she prepared dinner for the family, Dupe added a mysterious powder to the children's meals. When the children ate their dinner, they felt unusually drowsy and went to bed early, which pleased Dupe. Once everyone in the house was asleep, she quietly woke the children, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. Come with me, she whispered, her voice gentle but commanding. The children, still groggy with sleep, followed her without question. In the blink of an eye, their simple night clothes transformed into elegant attire. Dupe herself changed into a graceful, elegant woman, her worn clothes replaced by a shimmering gown. With a wave of her hand, she summoned a broom, its handle marked with a strange red symbol. Hold on tight, she instructed, her voice filled with excitement, and with that, they were off, soaring through the night sky. The world below them a blur of light and shadows. The children clung to Dupe, their initial fear giving way to wonder as they flew from country to country. Each night, they attended grand balls in faraway lands, mingling with strangers who spoke in languages they didn't understand. Dupe introduced them to elegant men and women, teaching them the customs of the elites. For weeks, this became their secret. The children, enchanted by the magical journeys, eagerly looked forward to the nights they would fly with Dupe. They kept their midnight adventures to themselves, thinking it was just another one of the many wonders their beloved Grandma Dupe had shown them. Then one quiet weekend afternoon, as the family gathered in the living room to watch a documentary about planes, the youngest child, Philip, pointed excitedly at the screen. Look, Mommy, that's our plane! Tessie, the middle child, jumped up from her seat. Yes, it's just like our plane, but it can't be. Their parents exchanged puzzled looks. What plane? Mr. Labi asked, turning to his oldest son, Michael. We didn't buy any toy plane for you. Michael shook his head, a smile spreading across his face. No, Daddy, it's not a toy plane. It's a big, beautiful plane we travel on with Grandma Dupe. Mrs. Alabi's heart skipped a beat. Her mind racing. What do you mean, Michael? When does this happen? Midnight, the 3 children chorused, their voices innocent and matter of fact. What? Mrs. Alabi's voice wavered, her eyes wide with shock. She could see the sincerity in their faces. They weren't making this up. Wait here, she said, her voice trembling as she stood up. She exchanged a glance with her husband, who looked equally disturbed. "We need to talk to Dupe." Hi bestie, if you're watching to this point, please subscribe. Turn on your post notifications to always be notified when I post a new video. And please don't skip my ads, they really help this channel. Share, and yeah, back to the story. It was the weekend, Dupe's day off, but the urgency of the situation couldn't wait. Miss Alabi grabbed her phone and dialed Dupe's number, her hands shaking. "Dupe, please, we need you to come over right away," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Dupe arrived within the hour, her face calm and untroubled as she stepped into the living room, where the Alabis were waiting. The children, sensing the tension, sat quietly, their eyes darting between their parents and Dupe. "Dupe," Mr. Alabi began, trying to maintain his composure. "The children have been telling us some interesting things. They said you've been taking them on trips at night. Is this true?" Dupe smiled warmly, nodding as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "Yes, it's true," she admitted without hesitation. "You've been so good to me, and I wanted to give these wonderful children the only gift I have. At least they can travel and see beautiful places." Mr. Alabi's hands clenched into fists, his calm demeanor slipping as anger and fear took hold. "What about the plane they speak of? Where is it? Which airport?" he demanded, his voice rising. Dupe, still smiling, reached into her bag and pulled out the broom, the same one she had used to fly with the children. She held it out proudly, the red marking on the handle glowing faintly. "It's always with me," she said, as if she were showing them a precious heirloom. Mrs. Alabi felt a cold chill run down her spine. She stared at the broom, her mind racing with disbelief and horror. "Take your gift back from my children," she pleaded, her voice breaking as tears welled up in her eyes. "Please, Dupe, take it back." Dupe's expression softened, as if she didn't understand why they were so upset. "I can't take it back. It's a gift," she said gently. "They love it, you know. They are so happy." The room fell into a heavy silence as the couple struggled to process what they had just heard. Their mind whirled with confusion, fear, and a growing sense of dread. "What do we do now?" Mrs. Alabi whispered, her voice trembling. Do we call the police, or should we?" "Deliverance," Mr. Alabi interrupted, his voice firm. "We need to take the children for deliverance. This is beyond us." But even as he said the words, he couldn't shake the unease gnawing at him. What if they were too late? What if this dark gift had already left a mark on their children's soul? Dupe stood there, watching them with a calm, almost serene expression, as if waiting for them to make their decision. The Alabis exchanged a final desperate glance, realizing that no matter what they chose to do next, their lives had already been irreversibly changed. Thank you for listening to this point, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this story as much as I enjoyed making it. Please check out my other videos. Don't just skip away. I'm sure you'll find something you like. And as always, I'll see you in my next video. Bye, besties!